Hi there, and welcome to Ian's Engage channel. I'm Ian. Okay, so here's the plan. Eventually, I want to have a rake of Pullman coaches on Shelfington. The idea is that the luxurious umber and cream coloured carriages will give me a great excuse to introduce an A3 steamer to the layout, or even a Deltic to haul them around. In fact, the plan got off to an excellent start, or so I thought. I started off by purchasing the first coach, which is the Hadrian Bar. In reality, this coach was part of the train that made up the Tees Tyne Pullman service that operated between King's Cross and Newcastle until the mid-1970s. It should be noted that I'm not aiming to replicate this service. I just thought that the coach would make an interesting addition to the train I'm putting together, and the layout in general. Unfortunately, purchasing coaches new is out of the question, because, as you know, prices are crazy for new stuff within the hobby nowadays. In fact, even when buying second-hand, prices are still on the steep side. However, I got lucky on eBay and had a best offer bid accepted, and that set in motion the Pullman project, of which this is the first video. Now, while I was pleased with the price I'd paid for my auction site find, it had a couple of issues, which probably accounted for why my best offer bid was accepted in the first place. Firstly, there were no couplings on either of the bogies. I hadn't actually spotted this, in spite of it being obvious when examining the images that the seller had uploaded for the auction listing, although they'd also failed to mention it in the description. Okay, so having no couplings was annoying, but that wasn't the end of the world, as couplings could easily be replaced, or so I thought, more of which later. However, the second issue was a little more serious. After trying to run the coach along a piece of test track, I realised that it didn't run very well at all. In fact, the coach would hardly move, which was quite concerning. So, off came the bogies for more of an in-depth investigation. I'd never removed coach bogies before, but found that a firm tug on the bogie frame was the key to releasing them. You just had to be careful that the bogie pin didn't shoot off and become lost forever. I was pleased to see that the first bogie I looked at seemed to run fine along my piece of test track. The second bogie, however, didn't run well at all, and wanted to derail all of the time as I tried to propel it along the track. So, I removed both sets of wheels and tried to work out why they were binding in their axle boxes. The axles actually seemed to be very tight within the bogie frame, so I decided to purchase some axle reamers from DCC Concepts and tried using them to make the wheels run more freely. Unfortunately, while the bogie now ran a little bit freer and the derailment had stopped, it hadn't fixed the problem completely. I therefore took the decision to replace the bogies completely. Now, I'm no expert on coach bogies, and to be honest, there didn't seem to be a huge choice of what I could use as replacements. However, after a bit of research, I ended up going for the Commonwealth bogie set from Graham Farish, as I'd seen them fitted to other types of Mark I coaches. I have no clue whether these would have been used on Pullman coaches in reality though. Thankfully, these ran beautifully straight out of the packet. Annoyingly though, the new bogies also came without couplers, but that was okay because I had some rapido couplers in stock, and they'd be easy enough to fit, wouldn't they? Well, no, they ended up being far from easy to fit. Having had very little experience with couplers, I needed instructions on how to assemble and fit them. Unfortunately, no instructions had been supplied, so I turned to my good friend Google, only to be let down again. All I could find was a picture of how the couplers should look once they'd been assembled, but no instructions of how to get them to this stage. This is where I encountered a new kind of hell. The couplers consisted of 3 parts: the coupler housing, the rapido coupler, and the small spring. These 3 parts needed to be assembled before they were clipped into the bogie frame. Although it was fairly easy to slip the rapido coupler inside the housing, I found that inserting the tiny spring to keep the coupler in place was absolutely impossible. In fact, I lost 3 springs as they zoomed off across my workbench while trying to manipulate them into position. Therefore, I needed a new strategy to keep the couplers in place, and the new strategy involved using a combination of glue and blue tack. First, I clipped the coupler housing into the bogie frame and glued it to prevent it falling out, which it had a tendency to do. Once the glue was dried, I filled the coupler housing up with a very small amount of blue tack. I was then able to carefully manoeuvre the rapido coupler into the housing amongst the blue tack. I made sure that the coupler was still free to move around in the housing, but wasn't so loose that it would droop down, which would make it impossible to couple to. Once I'd fitted the couplings to both bogies, I tried them on a piece of test track to see if they would couple together, and was quite pleased with the results. Now that I was happy with each bogie, I attached them to the coach, putting the bogie pin into the bogie before attempting to position the pin into its locating hole. I then ran the coach along the piece of test track, and wow, look at it go! I'm not sure that if I'd had a never-ending supply of small springs, I'd ever have got one of them located into the coupling assembly, so I'm happy with my Heath Robinson solution using blue tack and glue. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this course of action for fitting couplers. I'm just using my channel to describe what I needed to do to get the job done. If anyone has any advice on how to fit small springs to the couplers properly, then please don't keep it to yourself and let me know. Alternatively, have you experienced problems of your own fitting couplings? I surely can't be the only one. Anyway, with the new bogies and the wheel reamers, it had cost a fraction more than I'd wanted to pay, but I'd ended up with my first rather lovely looking and running Pullman coach. I was now on the lookout for first-class parlour coaches, some kitchen coaches and a brake coach to continue the Pullman project, although next time I'll definitely make sure that the bogies have couplers attached. Okay, so that's about it for this update. If you've got any hints, tips, useful tools or techniques to pass on to a beginner in N-gauge modelling, especially about fitting little springs to rapido couplers, or if you simply want to say hello, then please do so in the comment section. Anything and everything you've got to say will be greatly appreciated. In the meantime, thanks very much for watching. Hopefully I'll have another update soon. Bye.